Dan. Welcome everybody to welcome members of the public and any press who might be watching the live stream of this Adults Committee meeting via the Council's website. You're very welcome. Members, by now you're aware of the usual need to keep your video camera switched on, please, for the duration of the meeting and to keep your microphone muted, except when I invite you to speak. And as ever, please click the raised hand function if you wish to ask a question or comment on any of the items today. Obviously, there is always a risk that we might run into some sort of technical glitch. Obviously, patience is required if that happens. Should it occur, I'll declare an adjournment while we address the fault and the public broadcast may need to be paused. If it's not possible to address the fault, the meeting might have to be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened, but hopefully we won't run into any issues. And just a reminder to members and officers that all virtual meetings are being recorded. So moving to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. So I'll begin by calling the names of all members of the committee to establish that you're here. Please unmute your microphones now. First on the list is Councillor David Ambrose-Smith.
Present.
Councillor Adela Costello.
Present.
Councillor Sandra Crawford.
Present.
Derek Giles.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Mark Goldsack.
Yeah, I'm present, Chair.
Councillor Nicola Harrison.
Present.
Councillor Mark Howell.
Present.
And we've received apologies from Councillor Wells, and Councillor Bill Hunt is kindly substituting.
And I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Wilson.
Present.
Thank you, Graham. And myself, Councillor Anna Bailey. Does any member need to disclose any pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest for items on the agenda today? Councillor Graham Wilson.
When we get to item 6, I just need to ensure people are aware that I'm the County Council's appointed governor to CPFT.
Okay, I don't think that precludes you from anything at all. I think you are able to take full part in the meeting and voting, etc. I think, Graham, thank you for that. Anyone else? I've got no other blue hands raised. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 2, which is the minutes of the meeting on the 10th of September. We're being asked to approve the minutes. Can I ask any member who doesn't agree with the proposal to approve to use their raised hand now? Otherwise, I will take it as an indication that you're all happy with that. Okay, I can't see any objections, so we'll take that as carried, and I will obviously sign the minutes when I can, when we're back in the office. Okay, any items on the action log? If we just move to the action log, if anybody's got anything that they would like to raise on the action log, please raise your blue hand. Officers, would it just be, I noticed a couple of items just sort of ongoing. Would it be possible just to have an update on those? In particular, we've got the ongoing thing about the pooled budget, the learning disability pooled budget, and it would be good. We note the point that it says about restarting 1st of September, but the status is shown as on hold. And then perhaps the next one, well, in fact, the next one is more self-explanatory because the housing related support stuff is ongoing. So I don't know who's able to help me around the CCG. Is that Will?
Yeah,
Patton, if you could just tell us where we're up to with that.
Yeah, of course. So because of the current situation around COVID and priorities around assessing people with COVID in the community, that piece of work has been delayed. So the reviews within the LDP has been delayed. We've been in discussions with Health about that, and the latest forecast of when that work will resume is at the end of March, beginning of April.
Okay, so that is a significant departure from the 1st of September date that was recorded in the action log, and obviously, you know, there are ongoing concerns around the costs to this council from that. Thank you for the update. Councillor Wilson, have you got something to raise on the action log?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that. So thanks for the update, Will. If it's not going to happen until 1st of April, is it not going to have implications for the business planning process for next year, where we were hoping to get some resolution to help inform budgets?
Will, can you help us with that?
Yes, so there's lots of things impacting our budget planning process for next year, and I know it's on the agenda for me to give an update to that. We are working with the CCG. There are lots of priorities around COVID that we are having to focus on at the moment, and you know, in terms of resource availability to do that work, realistically, the earliest time we're going to be able to get to that is March and April. I think depending upon the outcome of that work will depend upon how that then plays into the budgets going forward. So there's a discussion then to be had with Health about that.
Thank you, Will. Yes, and future budget and the medium-term financial strategy is an ever-changing document at the moment. We'll no doubt be having a look at that later in our business planning item. Okay, if there's nothing further on that, I can't see anybody else indicating to speak, so we'll move on to item 4, which is petitions and public questions. We haven't received either, so we'll move on to the next item of business. So item 5 is the Early Intervention and Prevention Pseudo Framework, a strange term. Sarah, I think you're here to introduce the report to us, please.
Yep. Good afternoon. Thank you, Councillor Bailey, and good afternoon, committee. My name's Sarah Bye. I'm the Senior Commissioner for Early Intervention and Prevention Services, and I'm here this afternoon to present the report on the proposed procurement of an Early Intervention and Prevention Pseudo Framework. So the report outlines the importance of the early intervention and prevention agenda to manage demand for adult social care, enable people to develop or maintain their independence in their communities, receive an appropriate level of support, and to reach their individual goals to maintain or improve their quality of life. We're recommending the procurement of an early intervention and prevention framework, which will give us the ability to commission or call off services from an approved pool of providers. This will enable us to work strategically with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough CCG and Peterborough City Council to commission effectively and to support service innovation in partnership with our providers and service users. The framework's divided into 4 lots, and we've devised these in conjunction with our partners and providers. So the lots are outlined in the report, but cover hospital discharge and admission avoidance, information and advice, community support, and day services. Each lot will have a maximum budget, and this will enable individual call-offs of services over the term of the contract. Current contracts and values have been scoped for inclusion in the framework, and these are shown in Appendix 2, appended to the report. And each contract or group of contracts will be reviewed by commissioners and approved by the Joint Commissioning Board prior to any call-off to ensure that there's effective and appropriate commissioning or redesign. Day services currently form part of the framework and also are a work stream within Adults Positive Challenge programme. The work stream's looking at the vision and strategy to support both the COVID recovery of these services and also their ongoing delivery of service. The lot included for day services on the framework provides a potential mechanism for the future contracting of these services, but we're not using this to either preempt how or if this lot will be used. We just want to make sure that there's an effective mechanism if we choose to use it in the future. Decisions on the commissioning of day services and the potential use of this lot will be presented in the future back to Adults Committee for a further decision once we've had a bit more detail and obviously worked with services through this difficult and challenging period for them. So the request at committee today is to approve the procurement of the Early Intervention and Prevention Pseudo Framework and to include the currently scoped contracts within that as well.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Nice and succinct, but very clear. Thank you for that. I can't currently see any blue hands, but I certainly just have a question while other people are thinking. I was particularly interested in the sort of detail from page 13 onwards, which is talking about the individual lots and what skills we're looking for and the outcomes that we're looking for. This is an incredibly important set of services, early intervention and prevention. We're all about that. That's the whole focus of what we're trying to do, is to help people maintain their independence for as long as they possibly can and be at home, which is generally where people do want to be. So it seems to me that, you know, the monitoring of this is very important, and, you know, taking community support by way of example, because it is something that I do think is particularly important coming out of COVID. We've seen all that community support. We're working incredibly hard in our communities to try and keep that going. It talks about one of the outcomes being individuals are able to maintain their independence. And I was just keen to understand to what degree we would be monitoring providers on this contract. We certainly don't want to be monitoring them to death to make it onerous, because, you know, we don't want them to spend all their time filling in forms and providing feedback. But of course, we do want to know that the outcomes we're looking for are being achieved. So it's a difficult balance. And I think committee particularly will be keen to understand how well it's working and how we think we're doing. So, you know, and I think maintaining independence, you know, there's different ways that you can look at that and different ways that you could measure that and monitor it, and whether it's self-reported or whether it's people not going into formal services or so. And can you just outline for us how you see that working in terms of contract monitoring?
So I think there's a couple of things. So obviously the call-offs will be individual services. And I think historically we've had a whole range of services doing that type of support, but being or reporting their outcomes in very different ways. So I don't think we've ever had a coherent way of being able to strategically think about their services or monitor their impact across service boundaries. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to try and deliver something at that higher level that we could apply to all of the call-offs that will be delivered under that lot, so that we can then start to compare and contrast how people are delivering services and the impact it's having on communities. I think there are ways that we're developing in terms of that, as you say, kind of ability to monitor an outcome which is quite individual, and we want to try and put some things in place with services. So it might be around preventing a referral into adult social care. It might be around so that we can start to monitor and manage that demand. And we're looking at doing something similar around the carers service at the moment. So it's taking some of that learning and really trying to think about how we do that in a better way. I think we want to make sure that there will be some self-reported elements of that. I think there has to be, about somebody, how they feel about their independence and that they feel that they've achieved their outcomes. But we're also going to want to work with our services, and part of the framework will enable us to have a strategic conversation with our services who are under that, so we can really learn from them as well and develop a monitoring framework that will work.
Thank you for that. I think obviously it's important to try and get something in place in the outset, and I personally, I think the neighbourhood cares teams would be able to, and Louise, I think Louise is on our call today, would be able to provide some real insight into doing that, because they went through quite a lot of pain about how to capture that sort of thing. So
conversations with Louise about how we might be able to do that best. So it's just pulling that together to make sure we've got that covered across all of the different service types.
Thanks, Sarah. I've got Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Anna. I've got a couple of questions. I definitely welcome this initiative. The things I wanted to clarify were, one, does this is the intention of these frameworks to cover all the work that is listed and one could interpret from the heading, so community services, and in particular, how does that compare with the proposal for community catalysts, where I thought that was encouraging micro enterprises to help people working within the community or people caring within the community. And then the second question, when you look at the people who are currently providing the services, there's a relatively small number of them. And I was hoping that these frameworks would ensure that there was a larger range of large and small micro enterprises and bigger, including voluntary and charities who might be able to provide services for us. So are you able to reassure us on those points?
Absolutely. So I'll take the second question first, if that's okay. The current contracts, as you say, are around quite a small number of providers, but we're doing quite a lot of engagement at the moment to make sure that we widen that pool, and thinking about both large and small organisations. We want to reach all of those. So I've been talking to a whole range of people about their ability to enter the framework. We're making it as light touch as possible so that we ensure that as many people as possible will meet the criteria and be able to have the skills to deliver, but will not be precluded from entering the framework, so that we can definitely deliver that. And working with our infrastructure and capacity building organisations to make sure that they can get organisations ready to be able to enter onto the framework as well. So trying to join up some of those elements. In terms of the first question around the community support definition, if you like, of that lot, it won't cover everything, and there's some things that I think would be too complex, or we won't have the market within the framework to be able to deliver. So we need to be cognizant really of if there are any gaps, and the framework will be able to be reopened so that actually we can put new providers onto the framework through the lifetime of the contract. And we want to make sure that things like different providers or support that we can deliver through that framework can be done strategically and to best effect. So we're having to think about the definition, but some projects I think will be too complex, or we won't have the market, but we would always use the framework as an option for people to commission through. So it doesn't have to be for everything, but will give us a mechanism to do that. I know Karen's going to be talking a little bit about micro enterprises, and that's the development of much smaller, almost individual type enterprises, but it could be that they could then go on to the framework if that's what they wanted to do and to deliver something slightly different. So we're trying to think of as much flexibility as we can to build into the framework so that we can deliver across all of the areas.
Okay, thank you very much. At some stage I might need an idiot's guide as to what framework covers what elements of work. Thank you.
Complicated, isn't it? And yeah, it does feel like maybe, you know, if we want to get new and diverse and different types of providers, they may well need more hand-holding, you know, through this procurement process. And I'm sure we're going to be able to, when we come on to later onto the micro enterprise paper, hopefully we'll be able to learn from community catalysts if that work does indeed get agreed and go ahead, about, you know, because they're real experts in helping people, you know, get into the market, aren't they? So that'd be good. Councillor Crawford.
Well, thank you. I've got two items that I'd like clarification of. They just interest me particularly. The first one is about the provider, is it Linker on page 17? And the second one is on page 5, using people's strengths and assets. I'll talk about Linker first, because when I first saw it, it said care home trusted assessor. And I first thought, well, maybe this means that there's somebody who's going around looking at care homes to see if they're good enough for our residents, etc. But then I thought, well, no, this is early intervention and prevention. So it might mean that they're assessing people to see if they need that level of care. I wondered if somebody could just explain what Linker does. And then on page, I think it was page 6, yeah, it said assessing people according to their strengths and assets. And I wondered if they could just briefly explain that one as well. Thank you.
No problem. So Linker is an organisation who provide care home trusted assessors, and that is a service that operates through the acute hospitals in order to facilitate discharge. So it's the kind of a coordination role, if you like, between the hospital ward and the care home to get people out of hospital more quickly. Some of that's been superseded by the discharge to assess guidance that's come in very recently, and we are looking at that, but that's the kind of current service that it delivers. Does that clarify?
Sandra, you're on mute still.
Need to unmute again, sorry. So they're basically assessing the patient to see if they need to go into a care home or if they can go home. Is that basically it?
Assess on behalf of the care homes. So they're trusted by the care homes to make the assessment of somebody's need, and that the placement in the care home meets the person's needs, and also the care home can accept them. So they're kind of trusted assessor on behalf of the care home.
Is that what you call early in prevention though, or is that just a basic, obviously an important need, but I wondered if it was early intervention. I'm not sure. So
I think it's around getting people out of hospital into the right place.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was just the small point about the strength and using people's strengths and assets. Yeah.
So that would be around really that individual assessment of somebody's current abilities, their skills, their strengths. So just understanding what it is that they can do. So really looking from a strengths-based approach about what somebody can do and not what somebody can't do, and just utilising the assets that they may already have in terms of either support assets, so it could be family and friends, but also their community assets. They may already be linked in with services that are supporting them, or also that kind of inner skills that you might have that you could then utilise to either maintain your independence or support other people to do different things.
That's
Okay,
soft assets, not financial assets, nice assets.
Right.
Councillor Harrison. Oh, Nicola, you're still, you're muted.
Do beg your pardon. Yes, nobody has so far queried the word pseudo, which I'm afraid I do want to do. I must admit, I really don't like the word at all. I think it's a very derogative, it's normally used in a derogative way, really. I mean, and it just seems so weird. So maybe you could just explain that, Sarah.
Yeah.
But my more important point, I suppose, is just, I suppose in a way it's following on from Graham Wilson's point about ensuring, I suppose, that it's inclusive enough, that it's flexible enough, that it's able to grow enough over time and so on. I suppose in a way I'm particularly concerned about the over time, flexibility, because innovation happens, new people come along. I mean, now, so forgive me because it doesn't matter that nobody's heard of it, but just recently I have introduced a young, family friend of mine to the council who started a rather wonderful thing he's doing down in Wokingham Borough Council at the moment, which is an app-based information sort of system. Looks really good, and I know that officers I've sent it to think it might be interesting, and that it'll go into the system and it'll be evaluated, and that's absolutely fine. But obviously that's just in my mind. So when I think about a little startup, enterprise, social enterprise like that, trying to innovate, trying of course to find, to spread the good work they're doing now out from, they've got a proper external evaluation and so on. They're obviously serious about what they're trying to do. How will they, or they're like in 1 or 2 years time or 6 months time, when an appropriate moment comes up, how will they get themselves onto the framework? So I suppose I'm asking you about that flexibility thing, but giving you that example and sort of asking you to put yourself in the shoes of a provider, and see how they can actually, how we can make sure that the council is open to that, those kind of new opportunities.
So the pseudo part of the framework. So the procurement and legal structures of the different types of procurement options we have. So framework is one of those. Or a dynamic purchasing system might be another one. Pseudo is just, it's a version of, so it doesn't stick tightly. It's within the procurement regulations, but it's not sticking tightly to what the definition of a framework is under those regulations.
Is
so
it a technical term, is it?
Yes, yeah, as part of the procurement regulations.
Who dreamed that one up is all I can say. Okay, fair enough, say no more.
And the thing about the flexibility and people being able to come onto the procurement framework.
Yeah. So we are building into the framework the ability to open it on a regular basis. So
what does that mean, regular?
So we're looking at annually at the moment. So people will be able to apply to be on the framework annually. But throughout the time, we'll be working with communities and organisations and our voluntary sector infrastructure support services to make people aware of the opportunity for them to then be able to bid onto the framework. So once you're on the framework, then you can kind of bid for the call-off services. So we would want to make sure, obviously, people have got the right skills and ability to deliver services if they were to be on the framework, but also that the council can be assured about the quality and the financial viability of those organisations as well. So we'll be working really closely with the infrastructure voluntary sector to capacity building, so that people are made aware of the opportunity, that we can support them around the information and things that they might need to get on the framework. So it could be just making sure that they're registered as a charity or a viable company. So all of those things, literally walking people through that process to make sure that they're know what the kind of rigor is around the ability to get onto the framework, and then also what that will mean once they are on there.
So I mean, what it means then, though, is that you at any one time you've got. I mean, I understand, I suppose, roughly how framework contracts work, and at any one time, the money, the budget, available budget is already, is committed for, well, whatever, for 3 years or 5-year contracts or whatever it is, with individual providers who sit on that, sit within that framework. A new entrant to the framework has an annual opportunity to get in on it. If they just miss that, they could end up waiting nearly a year to seek to get on it, could they? And then once they are on it, they've got to wait then, have they, for contracts to expire before there is budget, unless new budgets are brought forward, obviously, for a new project or what have you.
Yeah. So there will be obviously committed budget, because we would want some services to be delivered, but we want to try and look at how we can do things differently to try and create capacity to enable us to more effectively commission across the CCG and Peterborough City Council, so that hopefully we can look at how we can realise more effective services that will enable us to build capacity, to have some flexibility in the budget. And we've built that into the lot values, so there's a bit of flexibility in there as well. So it means that we're not tightly stuck to the current budget, but if new funding comes in, that we'll be able to put something else out that might complement what we already are commissioning.
Could I just suggest that you just consider whether annually is, I mean, obviously, again, I realise that there are loads of framework type contracts. There's lots of experience within the council, across the whole council's activities of framework contracts, obviously. But could I, given the desire and need for fleet of foot innovation in this field, and the way that the council is moving quite rightly, and perhaps the whole industry, is moving quite rightly towards working with micro businesses, with people with small ideas that become big community-based things, that whether or not there is scope to actually have a review a bit more frequently, say twice a year, to allow in those kind of really tiny new things that may crop up out of any one individual, one of our local communities may produce an idea, and that we would want to give them a chance, and perhaps for a new business and an individual perhaps sitting in their bedroom thinking up this marvelous new idea for their own community, maybe it seems a bit long to have to wait a year to get on a framework contract.
And I think that's why we would look at other options for something like that. You'd look at the Innovate and Cultivate Fund, for example, that would be able to give that opportunity for somebody to grow, to then think about how those next steps as well. And we really want to try and link up some of those parts of the system to provide progression for those organisations.
But I think it is worth just asking you to give some thought about whether it could be open twice a year and whether that's a helpful thing or not. I mean, I think we're happy probably for officers to decide, but we'd like to know that you've considered it. And I certainly, I don't know about Nicola, but I certainly don't have a proper understanding of what that really means in terms of officers, resource, etc. So I think we leave that decision with you, but I think we're asking you to consider it. I think
definitely.
Thanks, that would be useful.
Yeah,
Just that
thanks,
is all
Nicola.
I'm asking. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford wanted to come back.
Oh, thank you for allowing me a second question. I just noted that we're spending almost 324,000 on care network community navigators. And I'm thinking here really of value for money. I mean, are these community navigators being paid, and are they, well, you know, qualified people there, or is it the company getting that money? Sorry to be so crude, but I mean, it is important to me.
Fine, Sandra.
So Care Network deliver the Community Navigator service, and that would be a service that potentially would be called off under the framework. It's a large service that covers the whole of Cambridgeshire, works really closely with our old people's locality teams. They have paid staff, but also run quite a wide variety of volunteer schemes for people as well. There is a whole range of different services they provide that link people with their local communities. They develop new initiatives in local communities as well. It's a big service that helps manage the demand into social care. So they do a lot of work with quite complex cases that are kind of on the edge of care, if you like, so that they would potentially need, if they weren't having that support, they would need adult social care support. So it's quite a large service. I'm not entirely sure, I don't commission it individually, so I'm not sure of the exact details.
Sarah, can you just explain what you mean by calling off?
Yeah, absolutely. So once providers are on the framework, they are there until we put forward a call off or a service specification to say, this is the service we want, and we're going to call that from the framework. So we call it from that particular lot within the framework.
In other words, at that point, you then have a contract and you're going ahead with using their services.
So we don't anticipate any, or we don't confirm any volume to any particular provider until they've got a contract through the call off.
Thank you.
My main interest was, well, these community navigators being paid, or is it the company that's being paid? I mean, how sure are we of that?
I can double check that for, and I think they have got quite a wide range of staff. So I can check that. I'm sorry, I don't commission that service individually, so I'm not entirely sure of the detail, but I can double check.
Definitely got an infrastructure of staff, and although there are volunteer community navigators, some of the staff that are overseeing that service and the delivery of that service, I think, are paid staff. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, members, I don't see any other blue hands raised for questions or comments. So we're being asked to agree the procurement of the early intervention and prevention pseudo framework lots 1 to 3 and lots 1 to 4, and to the contracts listed in Appendix 2 to be included in the scope of that framework, and contract award for the early intervention and prevention framework to be delegated to the Exec Director of People and Communities, which is our normal process. I haven't heard any dissension to that, and heard a lot of people speaking in support. So if anybody doesn't agree those recommendations, can you raise your hand now to let me know? Okay, not seeing any objection to that at all. So we'll take that as unanimous, and thank you very much, Sarah, for your helpful answers.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving on to item 6, which is the Section 75 agreements for the Integrated Community Equipment Service and Occupational Therapy. And I think Diana Mackey is here to help us with this one. Diana, can I?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, hello. Hi there.
That's fine. Thank you, Councillor Bailey, and good afternoon, everyone. So this report covers the position with regards to the Community Equipment Service contract and the associated Section 75 agreement and pooled budget for that service with Cambridgeshire and Peterborough CCG. And it also covers the position with regards to the occupational therapy service and Section 75 agreement that we have with Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Foundation Trust. So I'll talk briefly about the equipment service and then about the OT service. The equipment service, which is provided by NRS Healthcare Limited, was due to be retendered later this year for a new contract to commence next April. But with the arrival of the pandemic, and in order for the service to remain stable and to be able to respond to that, the contract would need to be extended for another year. In addition, this would mean a requirement to extend the Section 75 agreement and pooled budget with the CCG. The pooled budget has performed well in recent years, and the service continues to support people to remain living as independently as possible at home in the community. In relation to the community OT service, this is delivered by Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Foundation Trust and is governed by a Section 75 agreement between us, the County Council and the between the County Council and CPFT. This agreement requires some updating so that we can continue to be confident that the service delivers OT interventions that align with our priorities in adult social care, particularly in delivering the outcomes associated with the Adults Positive Challenge programme. So, committee are asked to approve the recommendations that are stated at the beginning of the report, and I'm very happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Thanks for that. And I can report, excellent reports of the NRS service that, I've had direct experience of it, and it's been efficient, easy, straightforward. They do everything they say they're going to do. Very, very good service. I know it's very highly thought of. While other people are just thinking, just one for me, at 2.1, it talks about the need to in developing the new Section 75 to re-look at the risk share for, the pooled budget to ensure that the percentage split is consistent. This is familiar territory. You will have heard us talking about it earlier on another subject. So it's familiar territory for our committee, and it is a matter of ongoing concern, to make sure that splits are appropriate. So I think probably committee might like to hear back on that and to see the outcome of that review and to understand when that will happen, given the ongoing issues that we've got in dealing with these things with the NHS. So are you able just to give us any reassurance on that?
Yes, certainly. It's a piece of work that we've already started. It's being worked on almost as we speak. I've had communications with finance colleagues this week about it. So it's a question, it's always difficult with very, very integrated services where a piece of equipment is probably being issued to meet both a health and a social care need from the same piece of equipment. So just trying to really work out how that risk share is split is obviously a high priority for us, and we've got a wealth of data from NRS about all the deliveries, etc., that they do for us within the contract. So,
expect that to be concluded, Diana?
I would imagine it will be concluded within the next month or two, and it will be very much factored into when we're drawing up the next Section 75 agreement for the new contract that will start in 2022. So it will be done really in preparation for that.
Okay, that's really helpful. I just think as a future action, it may be a bit in the future, but I do think committee would like to understand the outcome of that discussion. It'd just be helpful. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. And I can't see Diana anymore, but we've heard from her.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. It's very interesting to compare the different way the community equipment service is being treated with the OT service, in that the community equipment service refers to a EU open tender process, although understandably with COVID, we're planning to extend the contract for a further year. Whereas in OT, there's just simply a rolling annual uplifts with CPFT. And at the moment, at least, no reference to an open tender process. So is there a reason why OT is treated differently? And are there not other providers who with TUPE and all the rest of it, could provide OT in the community as efficiently, if not more efficiently, than CPFT do?
Okay, we've had the Section 75 agreement in place now for a very long time. It's a good challenge. It is something we have discussed but not chosen not to take forward at the moment. But certainly it's something we can look at.
Because I'm not suggesting they are, and as a governor I should know if they were, but it's quite possible that CPFT are becoming a bit complacent and thinking, well, we've got this for as long as we want it, as long as we keep our nose clean, they will just roll over from year to year. And I know from the reports that you and others provide for me as a governor to CPFT, it often takes a long time for these Section 75 agreements to actually be negotiated and signed off. And they're often not signed off until well into the new year. So it'd be good to be able to think that they need to sharpen their pencils a bit and be a bit more on the ball if that's an issue for us.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. And that's really why we are really updating the Section 75 at the moment. We're adding in new performance measures, a new governance process, so that the Section 75 for OT will be governed in the same way as the mental health Section 75 agreement is. So it will be made much more formal than it has been up to now.
And actually, this committee is fairly close to the changes that happened in the mental health Section 75 and the improvement in the way that performance is reported back. Shauna, I saw your hand up. Did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, Diana covered it in the later bit, but I think it's really important to note that the governance is quite robust about the Section 75, and we are really challenging CPFT on how they are meeting the outcomes of the Adults Positive Challenge programme and working with us to evidence that, which will have a huge impact moving forward. So, yeah,
really reassuring. Thanks for that. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, very interesting report. I had first-hand usage of part of this system last year when I came out of hospital, and I can't praise it enough. However, and I'm not expecting an answer to my question today, but one thing that did concern me at the time was when I gave up the various bits of equipment, the guy came along and collected them, and I said, "Oh, well, you've got somebody else for these now, have you?" He said, "Oh no, mate." He said, "They're all scrapped." And I thought I'd only used the damn things for about 2 months. And is it right that when the equipment goes back, that's my question, is it scrapped or is it refurbished? Is it used again? Because if it's scrapped, then there's something that perhaps is an opportunity for recycling or whatever on this. But as I say, I don't know whether the answer could be done today, but or whether it's one for the future. Thank you.
I'm very happy to cover that, because it's very important that people understand that equipment is not scrapped unless it absolutely is beyond use. One of the key performance indicators for the contract is around the recycling of equipment. And at the moment, I think their rate of recycling is about 87% of equipment that is returned to the store gets recycled and put back on the shelf. And it's also worth remembering that the way the contract works is on a credit model, a buyback model. So every time a piece of equipment is recycled and available for reissue, we get a credit into the pooled budget. Okay, so there's an incentive for both parties to recycle equipment. Absolutely, it's important. There are some items that we all accept are single use only, and yes, they always get scrapped after being used once, but they are very few and far between items, and usually very low value items.
Yeah.
So the drivers need educating then a bit. because they're perhaps giving the wrong messages out to people.
I will feed that back, but no, please be assured that equipment is really well recycled.
I'm glad I asked the question, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, good question, Derek. Thank you. Okay, committee, I can't see anyone else indicating to speak, and we are asked to approve the integrated community equipment service and that the contract with NRS is extended for 1 year to March 22, and that the occupational therapy section 75 has a revised service specification and KPI schedule and work plan, and that a new section 75 agreement is drawn up for sign off by March 21 to cover the service agreement for the following year. I haven't heard again anybody speaking against that, so unless anybody indicates to me now, we will take that as a unanimous vote in support. So thank you very much to officers for your input on that, and we will move on to item 7. Which is transformation funding business case, and this is for the micro enterprise pilot supporting home care in Cambridgeshire. And I think Karen Chambers and Louise Tranham are doing a bit of a double act. Not sure who's going first.
I'm going first. Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Good afternoon, everyone. Louise is here in her role as Neighbourhood Cares Manager and is going to help me field some of the questions. So I'm going to present the paper and then Louise is on hand to deal with some of the questions, hopefully. This particular paper is requesting committee to approve £160,000 transformation funding bid, and that's for a 2-year pilot. The business case and supporting information are all attached as appendices to the report, and to also approve the direct award to community catalysts, who are the only social enterprise operating in the market with a really strong track record. So the concept of working with micro enterprises to absolutely develop and diversify our home care market has been proven where community catalysts have worked with numerous other local authorities. This particular model was identified throughout the work that I did when reviewing the home care contract, also identified through the neighbourhood cares pilots, and also to some degree was identified through the work that we've been doing around trying to encourage and the new direct payment providers around how we can also try and improve the personal assistant market. It also aligns with the Think Communities and our place-based approach that we're trying to also embed. It's been proven to grow and diversify, tripping over my words, the range of care and support options available in a local community. It offers more choice and flexibility to those who require care and support, and those also on the fringes of care and support who may not yet have an identified assessed need. It enables more people to remain living well at home for longer. And it also attracts more people into the care workforce because it's an area where people may not have originally considered. And it also supports employment in local communities. So just some key areas to note. This forms part of our ambition to improve and our work to develop a sustainable and diverse care and support market. Micro enterprises are generally people who are self-employed and want to work in an area that they're really passionate about, and will support people to remain at home or keep community connections in a whole range of ways that wouldn't necessarily be available through the formal provider market. As I've said, evidence from other pilots that have been undertaken by a range of other local authorities have shown the absolute positive benefits and what the increase of micro enterprises has brought to those local communities. Incorporates, as I've said, the learning from the neighbourhood cares and the Think Communities. I just wanted to bring your attention to point 1.4. Following feedback in the process of bringing the paper to here today and in readiness for General Purposes Committee, we've not yet confirmed the location of the pilot, because actually we want to be able to do some work, should this be approved, with community catalysts as part of the diagnostic exercise and working with our local internal colleagues so that we absolutely pitch it in the right area. And we need to do some of that prep work to be able to make sure that we do that. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'm happy to take questions along with Louise.
Thank you very much, Karen. Really, really clear. And I can't tell you how excited I am that this is before us. I really am. I think this is absolutely the right way to go. This is everything that we wanted to do if we'd had longer in the neighbourhood cares pilots. This is the way we were moving. It speaks absolutely to our place-based think communities agenda. And I think this is a massive opportunity for people out there looking, you know, who have this as a vocation but haven't realised it and haven't entered it, and perhaps even some people who have stepped up and supported people during COVID as well. There's so much new energy out there, and I think this is incredibly exciting, and I'm so pleased to see it before us. And obviously it has to get through General Purposes Committee as well. So members, over to you for any questions or anything you'd like to comment on. Councillor Wilson.
I also think this is a wonderful idea. I'm slightly uncertain though as to why we can't just get on and do it using Community Catalyst as a consultant to advise us rather than running a 2-year pilot. Because at the end of 2 years, we're going to have to do something. It either has to go into business as usual, which I thought was the purpose of the Neighbourhood Cares pilot, or we have to then have yet another pilot to think about something else. I can see the benefit of having an independent evaluation report after any pilot, because that's good practice. But what's the answer to why can't we just get on with it now?
Councillor Wilson, you and I are of absolutely one accord, and I before this paper came in for us, I questioned the use of the word pilot and said, look, we're just doing this. With the fact that we're only doing it in a small way at the beginning, we are just doing it, and this is, you know, we're committed to doing this. So it's a really good question, so let's hear the answer.
Oh, Louise.
I think one of the things that, one of the key things we learnt during the Neighbourhood Cares was absolutely to support people to set up a social enterprise. You can't underestimate the support they need to do that. And we did test it during the pilot, and it was a real challenge to do it. I think Community Catalysts have absolutely got the expertise that we need to help people set up this. So I think the reason, and again, one can always challenge whether we should use the pilot, and it should through the 2-year period be able to be self-sustaining. But I think what we haven't got is the expertise within our current organisation and staff to provide the support that is needed and to be there at the right time. And I think you can't underestimate that actually now is the right time. But what COVID has done has given us an opportunity to have a workplace, a marketplace out there where people are now looking to take this forward. One of the things we also struggled with through the Neighbourhood Cares pilot, we didn't have people coming forward wanting to pick up this work. And actually, if there is any advantage in COVID to us as an authority, is it about the fact that there's now a shift about available workforce to take this forward. So I think it's about the fact that we actually need the expertise to support people who may be very skilled in helping to provide support to people, but have never set up this sort of business before. And the complexity around CQC regulation about delivering personal care is quite complex and quite daunting. And Community Catalysts absolutely have got the right expertise and knowledge to support people. I think that would be my answer.
Is the use of the word pilot then just a reflection of the fact that we need Community Catalysts to do this work for us, and then after they've done it, we'll all be experts as well, and we'll be able to do it?
That is our aim.
Yes, and I would entirely agree.
Graham, over to you.
Well, why couldn't we have a framework, or even better, a pseudo framework, whereby we appoint Community Catalysts using single tender action or something to do this work as a consultant for us? It just seems better than calling it a pilot, which implies it's got a beginning and an end, and we're only really going to think about it rather than really get on with it.
It's semantics at the end of the day, isn't it? But I do agree that it's kind of important semantics, and it's about, you know, particularly when we hand this over to General Purposes Committee, about, you know, whether they see this as a pilot and what that means to them and the rest of the council. Whereas for us, this is, you know, what we are intending to do, and we're just using the best people out there to do it with us. as we start, but they are just helping us to roll it out, and they'll be with us for a time limited period, and then they'll go away and we'll carry on. So there's something in the flavour of the document that perhaps just needs adjustment.
Okay, obviously I'm happy to try and understand, but I have limited opportunity to change the paper in preparation for general purposes just because of the timing. But then that's about how we potentially then feedback from here today and present that at that meeting. So we can absolutely take that on board.
So I think we can just take it with a message to general purposes that the mood of Adults Committee is that this is a rollout, not a pilot.
Yeah.
Shauna, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with your views around it being a pilot. And I think what we're asking for is upfront investment to allow us to use community catalyst skills and experience to develop that expertise, but also use their capacity to look at how we develop an infrastructure around this approach. So beyond 2 years, we have the right capacity and the right skills in the right places to allow us to take this forward. And I don't think, because we've never got this off the ground before, we know what that looks like, but the experience over the next 2 years will give us that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hunt.
I only just dropping into this organisation for the day. So, but when I do see, I'd like to just underline what's been said. When you see the word pilot, anybody looking at it, whether it's GPC or anywhere, is going to look at this and say, "Oh, this is a trial. This is going to be just a short-term, a short-term go." I think we should really be quite firm about dropping the word pilot. I think it's gives a wrong impression to people who are just reading the documents. And I also, actually, while I'm saying it, when I'm older than most people in this group, but the word pseudo was actually a criticism of people when I was young, and the word pseudo meant false, not very nice, giving the wrong impression, two-sided. It was not a good word. And that's another one I think Councillor Wilson mentioned it, but I think it's a really bad word to use. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt, it's this word pseudo we've learned is a technical procurement term, but there we are, some of them are horrible. So we will make sure that when this is presented at GPC, hopefully I'll be there and I can speak up and, and give a flavour of what the Adults Committee is saying there, and hopefully do that justice. So we'll make sure that happens. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else indicating to speak at the moment. So again, there seems to be really good total support for this project, which is an excellent project. So we're being asked committee to approve the £160,000 transformation bid case for. Oh, sorry, Tamer.
Graham, we've got Graham Hodgson here.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a very quick point. I'll be presenting this proposal to GPC, and I would like to know if the committee would be happy to change the wording then from pilot to rollout.
But Graham, I'm so very sorry. I didn't see your hand at all. It didn't pop up on my screen for some reason, so apologies for that. Does anybody have any dissension to that idea? No, I think everybody's wildly in favour, Graham. So thank you for that suggestion. And yes, let's do that when we present it to GPC. Okay, so back to the recommendations: to approve the transformation bid for onward submission to GPC, and to approve the direct award to community catalysts. And again, I can't see anyone indicating against that, so we will take that as a unanimous decision. Thank you very much, everyone. So glad that's got unanimous support, and we wish it well on its way and look forward to hearing how it progresses. It's great. Okay, committee, we will move on to item 8 now, which was sent to you separately because it is a rapidly changing, ever-changing daily, I think, situation with the forward business planning. So item 8, business planning proposals. And who is, I think Wendy is going to introduce this to us.
Actually, Will's going to, Anna.
Well, okay. Yeah.
Will, sorry, over to you.
That's right, thanks, Councillor Bailey. So, yes, thank you. So just to recap, And as we've heard already a bit today, the impact of COVID on our services have been very significant and has materially changed the nature of the demand that we're seeing come through and expect to see going forward. And the environment is also changing and shifting, which of course impacts on our services and our budgets. And we've given and we've articulated some of those in the report, and you'll see some examples in sections 4.2 to 4.5 in the report. In response and as part of the business planning process, we've drafted our recovery and resilience plan, which takes the learnings from the first wave of COVID. So, for example, joining up with the Think Community principles and the Adult Positive Challenge programme. And we started to operationalise and shift resources and our assets to focus on local communities. And looking forward, we want to embed this learning, and that's a key part of our recovery plan, along with the APC programme, along with what we've learned around place-based commissioning and the Think Community principles to prevent, reduce and delay demand. Some initial investment will be required to support some areas of our recovery plan. So things like care suites, things like social work capacity to continue to work to support bed-based care, things like place-based commissioning and embedding the Think Communities approach. And some of those are detailed in section 5.3 of the report. In addition, our business planning process is focused on reviewing our baseline budgets and the spend within them. And then on top of that, taking a sort of scenario-based planning approach about the potential different scenarios and risks going forward. And the reason we're using that approach is because of the levels of uncertainty going forward. So you'll see that the changes in the baseline include things like increases in population of older people, increases in complexity of need, and they're detailed in section 5.2 of the report. And I think, just to come back, if I may, to Councillor Wilson's question around the LDP, as that work resumes, that may very well impact on the level of increase required into the base budget of the LDP that you can see in that section. Then overlaid on that baseline as part of 5.2, you'll see the scenario planning work, and you'll see that this has been added into the bottom of the table of section 5.2. As far as savings proposals, many of the initiatives have been impacted by COVID in year, so this year, and are expected to continue into the next financial year, and those are listed in section 6.1. And just on the APC savings, we had a target this year of 3.8 million, with plans in place at the beginning of February to deliver 2.6 million of that. Obviously, COVID and the lockdown scuppered much of that planned activity. We're forecasting to deliver 400,000 of that this year. And we've been reforecasting as part of our business planning process, forecasting what that might look like in 21-22. And the current work that's been done to date suggests that we can deliver a further 1.4. Obviously, we'll keep looking for opportunities to fill that gap going forward. And then finally, in section 6.2, we detail the additional saving initiatives that we've identified for 21-22 as we stand today. And then obviously, I think on the forward plan, further more detailed information around some of these things will come back in the December committee. So if I stop there, Anna.
Lovely, thanks very much, Will. Okay, so I'll open it up to members for any questions or points they'd like to make about the paper. I've got a few queries. Great, Councillor Wilson, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you, Anna. I'm just wanted to check about the opening position that we're assuming for next year, Will, because we receive the monthly finance reports that seems to indicate that currently adults safeguarding and commissioning is about 8 million plus overspent at the moment, and that is forecast that it could get worse. Clearly, we don't know what additional grants we might get from central government, and I gather there are some monies from central government that have been received centrally but haven't yet been allocated to everybody. So just to confirm what is in one of the earlier tables, does the table which reflects a residual savings to be identified of 32,800,000 include everything that you know about potential overspends from this year that starts with the opening budget gap for next year?
So I think it does, but I think if I may pass over to Stephen Howarth, who I'm sure will be able to give a financial answer to that.
Yep. So the opening budget gap estimate of £33 million does include the latest forecast position for adult services. Yes. So it assumes that. Just to say we are, I suppose, there's a lot of uncertainty in the rest of the year, even in terms of the in-year position, let alone forecasting the budget forward into next year, and the impact of any further changes on demand in this year, or indeed additional government funding, will change that position.
I appreciate that. Yes, no, that's helpful. Okay, well, and then the other bits of information that you provided is extremely helpful to us to get a flavour of what the situation might be. I have to admit, I've not gone through it in as much detail as I would have liked in order to be able to ask you other questions. But between now and December, when you will have worked up some of the proposals, we'll be able to come up with some other questions, I'm sure. But thank you for clarifying the opening position anyway.
Thank you very much, Graham. That's great. Thanks a lot. I've just got a few. On page 6 of the individual report that we're on, there's a table at 2.6, and the table is talking about the demand pressures and the calculations of the demand pressures, and we've got people and communities with the base pressures of 12.2 million, and then the scenario A pressures at 3.4 million in 2021-22. And if you look at that second row down and read it across, it goes negative for the rest of the medium-term financial strategy, implying that rather than having pressures, we will have an improving situation. And I just wanted to understand what that was based on and why that effect was in there. I don't know if Stephen is best placed to answer that.
Yep, so I think I might be able to provide the technical answer to that, which is that the numbers in this table should read like the numbers in the rest of the business plan, which is to say that the numbers carry forward into the subsequent years. So the 3.4 million in 21-22, the next number along is minus 802, which means that the absolute number in that year will be, well, my mental maths is okay, 2.6 million. So there's still a pressure in each year. It's just the scenario A forecast is a slightly lower pressure.
Understood. So it's about the new level of pressure, sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That answers that.
Cumulative movement.
Thank you for that. And I was keen on page 18, which talks about funding for additional demand for community equipment, which was a relatively modest 32k. And I just wondered what that really buys us, and whether, why that sort of, on the basis that we're trying to keep people independent at home, that seemed a relatively modest amount. I just wondered how we'd arrived at that and what it actually buys us, really. Happy for that to be taken offline if it's easier, because it's a minor point.
Sorry, Anna, whereabouts in the report?
Oh, sorry, it's on page 18. Page 18, towards the bottom, it's the second to last on the table, talking about funding for additional demand for community equipment.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So happy if you take that away if you want, but it just
okay.
just seemed quite low, really. I thought, you know, on the basis that we're trying to keep more people at home, and I would expect it to be rising more than that, really. Just keen to understand what we actually get for that, because it doesn't seem like we'd buy an awful lot of equipment for that, really. And then also, I was keen just to have an answer to, on page 19, which is paragraph 5.3.1, we've got a table which is talking about the Adults Positive Challenge programme at the top in the first line, and the investment in that of 640,000, which this is proposing the investment continues. But obviously what we know, and from later on in this paper, we know the savings have been seriously impaired. We've done well with savings in year one. It's important to recognise that. But savings have been seriously impaired during COVID and probably going forward, although we're still seeking the transformation elements of it. But I was just keen to understand how the one relates to the other, and you know, this sort of justification, really. I think it's important for people to hear it.
If I can take that,
Jackie, thank you.
Yes, as Wilson explained earlier, that we are working hard to try to recover from the 2.2 million impact from COVID that we would have had in this year, and we're taking that into next year. I think it's fair to say that in the last few months, as part of the work to try to recalibrate what we can offer in 21-22, it has been very important that we continue to maximise the investment in terms of getting ready for the delivery of the target for next year, and doing our utmost to try to improve that £400,000 position as it currently stands. I think in terms of the sort of unpredictability, our estimation of what we will deliver in effect is based on effectively 12 weeks where we think we were at coming closer to a normal level of work, but still significantly dampened by COVID. But that doesn't mean to say we are still continuing to work and invest in opportunities to maximise the benefit we can get. So, for example, we've continued to work on producing virtual training on technology-enabled care. We're continuing to work on developing the materials around that for others, and continuing to work to make sure that we're sustainable to continue ongoing technology-enabled care discussions to sustain our delivery into next year. So the work is still going on, and I think what it's important to realise that the target for this year was actually building on and was additional to the target we had in 19-20. So the reason why, so in some areas where we may not have delivered our 2021 expected additional or cost avoided, we're still having to work hard to try to get as much avoided cost as we can. So for example, in technology-enabled care, which is the area I know well, if you look at our historical cumulative benefits, so cost avoidance, plus what we're expected to do this year, the target was 5.4 million, whereas at the minute we are forecast to deliver 3.2 million avoided costs. So in terms of the Adults Positive Challenge numbers, it looks like zero, but in fact we're having to work very hard in a different way to try to get as much value out of that investment as we can. So I hope that helps explain.
It really does. Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for that explanation. And really just in my little summary, I just wanted to sort of remind everybody about the context, really, because we should never miss a trick that this is a public meeting. And, you know, I think we know that COVID is absolutely on the rise. It's on the march again. We know that our hospitals, you know, Adam Brooks, I know, is, you know, its beds are basically full. They've only got, I believe, 2 COVID patients, but, you know, they are in a situation where they would normally be, you know, more like January, February time, I believe. So it absolutely matters how we all behave in terms of trying to keep the COVID infection rate low, and it has a direct impact on our budgets at this authority as well. And so we need to keep spreading the message out there in our communities about, and we are doing well in Cambridgeshire, there's no doubt about it, we're doing much better than the national average, but we need to keep that up. I also just wanted to remind everybody that, you know, the transformation pot that we developed a number of years ago now, you know, is, I think, realised savings of about £26 million to date. So it's a very, very good thing that we did. But not only has it made savings, it has absolutely transformed the way that we deliver services and support people. And in many, many, many cases, much better outcomes for people. So I think we can be proud of that. And the fact that it's, you know, not surprisingly, taking a bit of a knock during COVID is nothing to be feeling bad about. You know, it's just the reality of life. What is perfectly clear is the very, very serious financial situation that we face. You know, despite the incredibly efficient level that our adult social care services are running at, and we are getting still good outcomes for people at very low cost per head of population. Compared with, you know, our statistical neighbours, you know, we are clearly in a serious situation looking forward, you know, unless and until the government does something about it. The good news is that, you know, we are far better off than many local authorities. And so I think, you know, it's becoming clear that something is going to be necessary. So I think that's important to understand. And obviously I know that the council senior officers and you know, council leadership is lobbying like mad into MHCLG and our MPs and all the rest of it, and putting very detailed messages across about the situation we face. So I think that's really important, and anything that we can all do to back up those messages will be good. I'm not seeing any other people looking to indicate. Obviously, we get these proposals back more. No doubt there'll be lots of changes by the time we see them again in December. So there'll be another go at it. So committee, for now, we're asked to note the overview and context provided for 2021-22 and the medium-term financial plan, and to comment on the draft proposals for the revenue budget and the capital proposals. We haven't got into the capital, but we know that they are pretty minor in our committee. Not seeing any dissension against those recommendations, so we will take that as unanimous. And again, thanks to officers, thanks Stephen for coming to committee to give us some answers. Right, moving on to item 9. This is a request to set up a member reference group for the Care Suites programme. And I think Gurdeep Singh is here to tell us about the member reference group plan.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey, and good afternoon, everybody. So the short report I'm presenting is about seeking help from members with our Care Suites programme, which Will has just mentioned as being part of the business plan proposals for next year. Just by way of context, Care Suites is an accommodation-based model for older people who can no longer remain safely living at home and or have complex needs which requires support around the clock, and including nursing support. The programme itself is wide-ranging in that it is about commissioning care. It's also about commissioning buildings. There are contracts in this which will relate to services, potentially property leases, and we get into discussions around tenancies, which implies there are investments decisions to be taken about assets, we're building capacity, and of course that links straight into land ownership as well. There's also within the Care Suites ideas around technology that we could employ and deploy for service users. So broadly speaking, it's a wide-reaching programme, and in fact it will take several years. Consequently, it's complex. What we're asking for is advice and guidance from different committees over the period of time of the programme. And to enable that, it would be of help to us if we could bring together that support from members to impart their knowledge from the experiences of other committees into the Care Suites programme at its early stages, and to proactively work with us rather than having to, in some cases, repeat some messages at different committees. So what we're asking for is the Adults Committee to approve a setup of a reference group and to engage with other committees mentioned in the report to nominate representatives to join that reference group. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Gurdeep. Committee, obviously what we're not doing with this paper really is getting into a detailed discussion about Care Suites and their benefits or otherwise, and lots of benefits. This is very much about setting up the member reference group. So before we move on to dealing with nominations to the reference group or working group, I think it's called, does anybody have any questions for officers around the actual the working group or the paper before us before we move into dealing with nominations? Councillor Hunt, you've got your hand up. Is that a question to officers about the paper?
No, it was. I thought the officer had finished his presentation, and I was.
Yeah, so I'm calling for questions on the.
I understand that. I'm not. I'm not.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm afraid I've got a couple of questions.
Okay, that's fine.
So the first one is just to clarify that this is a member reference group to advise officers on the delivery of the Care Suite programme. And if that is the case, then how will decisions be made on things such as you referenced about buying land or developing places and recruiting people and the like? Will that go back to the relevant committee where it needs to, and where it doesn't need to under current regulations be delegated to officers? So that, if we could just deal with that first, and I've got a couple of suggestions, please.
Okay, so Councillor Wilson, it's a working group, so it doesn't have any actual decision-making power. It's for advice and guidance back to officers, and then decisions as necessary that aren't under delegated officer power would go to relevant committees. Will or Gurdev, did you want to add anything to what I've just said?
No, thank you, Councillor Bailey, that's absolutely right. So when decisions need to be made, we'll take those decisions back to the relevant committee.
Okay, thank you. I think it'd be helpful to ensure that the minutes reflect that, just that as a factual decision. And then I would suggest that this committee needs to reflect the political makeup of the council, either by having members from the different committees that represent different parties, or potentially a couple of additional members, so that if the ruling party, the Conservatives, were to appoint somebody from each of the committees labelled, there was an opportunity for Liberal Democrats, Labour at least, and maybe Derek, if he was interested in appointing somebody to be representative on the member reference group from the other minority parties as well. I think that's important in order to get all views fed in a fair and open and transparent way.
Councillor Wilson, thank you for that. My understanding of a working group is that there is no requirement for political proportionality. I certainly don't see this as a political issue in any way, and my plan for today is just to call for nominations, and for basically we've got one member per the committees that are outlined, and this is very much about bringing the view of a committee and the expertise of a committee and the experience of a committee and the way that committee is developing, etc., to the table and feeding that in. And as we've already covered, decisions are not for the working group. It's about advice and guidance, and decisions come back to relevant committees at relevant times as necessary. So my plan when we finish dealing with any questions is just to call for nominations on each of the committee representations, and we'll if there is more than one nomination, we'll just need to take a vote, I think.
But then, well, just to clarify, that means if we take a vote and there's a Tory nomination and a Liberal Democrat nomination on every committee, the Tories will get their person appointed, and there will not be party political representation on this member reference group. I'm on another one to do with transport and planning matters in Huntingdonshire, and there is a mixture from different parties. and we operate in a broadly non-party political basis, and that's what I would expect to do here. But the advantage of having representatives from different parties is that it can be seen to be open and transparent, and everybody's views is considered as part of the advice that officers consider.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Should we not preempt the outcome of the nominations process, and let's see what the names that are put forward, and if necessary, we'll have a vote. I think that's probably a bit how democracy works, but the advice has been that it is, I don't see this as a political issue at all. This is about advice and guidance back into officers, and then for decisions at committee as usual, which is obviously politically proportionate. Councillor Crawford.
I quite like this topic because the community suites reminds me so much of the old warden controlled system, which I had, I mean, in practice it does anyway, because I had two elderly relatives who lived in warden controlled suites, and this does seem so similar because it gives you semi-independence, because you've got your own accommodation, but then you've got a warden or a nurse or somebody overseeing your health issues, etc. And the old system, the warden controlled system, did actually prevent a lot of serious illness. I mean, I had experience of an elderly relative who had high blood pressure, for instance, and the warden, who was a qualified nurse, used to make sure that she took her blood pressure tablets every day, which prevented her from having a stroke and ending up needing more care in hospital. So I can see the benefit of this, and it would interest me. That's all I want to say. So.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. And obviously, for those that aren't on the working group, you are absolutely at liberty to feed in your thoughts to that working group, and I'm sure that officers will be really, it's great that there's such enthusiasm for this. It really is. It is very exciting, and when you see some of the the drawings and the visuals of what it looks like and the descriptions and the tech enablement that these places are envisaged to have, it is very exciting. I think it's a very modern way of delivering support that I think we can probably all get behind, and that you would imagine you'd want to see your own relatives using. So it's great that there's such enthusiasm. So for those that don't end up on the working group, please, it doesn't mean that you can't put in your thoughts and ask for information, and officers will be pleased to hear thoughts from everybody. Councillor Harrison.
Chair, I think honestly, if the boot was on the other foot, I'm afraid I don't think that you would be saying what you are saying now. To be honest with you, you know that this is a political organisation, and if we end up with a single party dominating all 5 places on this working group, it will become a very heavily politically led thing. We have seen, in the case, I wrote a report about one. It will remain nameless, but I wrote a report about one of these working parties that was single party membership, which caused quite frankly, a tremendous scandal for the council a couple of years ago. And I think it's not exciting. It's not good. It's not a simple matter to set up. I think it's very unfortunate that officers have brought such a proposal, to be honest with you, without prior discussion between essentially party leaders should have discussed this to see.
Councillor Harrison,
Chair, I'm sorry. I'm surely I'm entitled to speak on the matter. I do think it is unfortunate. Graham Wilson, as I understand it, has put forward a suggestion, and that is that there should be 2 members from this committee. And I think he's saying, and certainly I would suggest, that there should also be a second member, perhaps from the Health Committee as well. That 2 of the 5 committees that are the service committees that are most closely associated with the actual public service, the actual, not just the money provision and so on, or the investments that might need to be made, but the actual public service where hearts and minds are concerned of members of this committee and of that committee. And I think that the suggestion that there should be 2 members, so that there can certainly be 1 member from each of those committees from the opposition parties. The opposition parties would have to sort that out amongst themselves. But so that we can be sure that there is representation, this is only fair in a council, which has legal obligations for proportionality when it comes to decision-making committees. But when major, long term, this is intended to sit for years, isn't it? A lot of work will go on. By the time this comes back to committees, a lot of the thinking will be so far gone that it can't be reversed. And if this council, and its political leadership wants to operate a tent with all the talents in it, then it should be open to the idea that it needs opposition. It needs to represent the people of this county. It needs to have opposition voices to bring our common sense. We try to cooperate and collaborate, don't we? As much as we possibly can. There will be disagreements sometimes, that's healthy. But we have a healthy debating and environment on this committee. And it seems really sad to me that there should just be a sense in which we know what will happen. You've said yourself, you'll take a vote. We know what will happen. And
thank you. I've understood. I think we've all understood.
To consider Councillor Wilson's suggestion for to ask officers to take this away again and come back with a revised proposal, if necessary, through chairs and spokes, to actually include 2 more members, so that there can be 1 member from this committee and 1 member from Health Committee who are from an opposition stance.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison, for your comments and your suggestion. The reason I was trying to just pick you up was just your comments about being critical of officers for bringing this forward. Of course, this paper comes to you in my name, not from officers. So, I just wanted to make that clear. This paper has been through me, and I don't think it's really to criticise officers for the flavour of the paper. I've got Councillor Goldsack.
I feel I've got to come in. I've listened to what our 2 Liberal councillors have said. I actually also am the chair of Commercial and Investment. And when the request came to Commercial Investment Committee, we planned to put forward the best person for the job. The colour of the rosette they wear is an irrelevance, utter irrelevance. And I can tell you that the best nomination person when it comes to my turn to put forward is not a blue rosette. So to actually come here with a crystal ball and to say that the way that this is going to come out is utter rubbish. I'm sorry, that's predetermined thoughts coming to a committee and not actioning on what's being put in front of you.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsack. I'm sorry this has all turned rather abrasive because we've had such a nice meeting, unanimous meeting to date. So let's try and get through this. I've got Councillor Crawford wishing to speak.
I just wanted to tie up what I said with what Councillor Harrison said. I think a wide-ranging and diverse membership of this committee would be a good idea, but also from what I said was that someone with observing experience of similar systems might offer suggestions of what would make it really work. I mean, I observed the old warden control system for many years because I had relatives there, and I know what makes it really work and what was really good about it. And this is a very similar system. It's not exactly the same, but in principle it's very similar. So I think, I'm not putting myself forward, but I think if somebody who understood from the past the old warden controlled system and what was good about it, that would be a very useful person to have on the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. And I think, whatever the outcome, what I would really ask, there's so much enthusiasm about this working group. What I would really ask is that whoever the representatives from the various committees end up being, that those of you that have comments and things that you wish to feed in, ask for the paperwork, and do that either, through your committee chairs or through, directly to the representative that you think is most relevant to do that through, or direct to officers. That is absolutely open to you to do. So what I don't want to do, Councillor Harrison, is delay this unnecessarily by asking officers to take the paper away and bring it back, which won't be till December. So I do think we need to, proceed with this. So what I'm going to do is call out each of the committees that we're asking for a representative from, and I'm going to ask for nominations to be put forward. And if there is more than one nomination, then we will need to take a vote on it. So that is what I'm proposing to do. And so we'll start with the Adults Committee, this committee. So can I please have any nominations for the Adults Committee? And I've got Councillor Derek Giles with his hand up first.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes,
Chair, if I may, I put my hand up right at the beginning of the debate, and my hand has been up there, and it was there. I flicked it down, and it's been up there for about 5 minutes.
Okay, sorry, it was third in my list, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Giles, do you have a problem if Councillor Hunt goes before you? Councillor Hunt, you have a nomination. We'll go through all nominations, so it will all happen. Councillor Hunt, you have something to say.
Yes, well, I've listened to Gurdev talking, and as I heard him talk, I thought, well, there's one person who suits this job totally, and that's David Ambrose Smith. And so I'd like to propose David Ambrose Smith.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for that nomination?
Yes, I do. Mark Goldsack.
Goldsack, you're happy to second that nomination?
Can I just clarify, do we know because he's not here, do we know he's prepared to do it?
David Ambrose Smith, who's on the line now.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith, can you confirm if you're happy to be the nomination?
Very happy, thank you.
I beg your
pardon, David. Can I confirm, Councillor Goldsack, are you seconding this?
I'm happy to, Chair. I actually think Councillor Hunt might have made the minor of error. And in fact, I think it was the other Mark 1 and Mark 2 here. That was
okay. That's fine. Okay, now, do I have any other nominations? So, sorry, I've got, Councillor Hunt, can you put your hand down? Because it is confusing everything, because it's all in the wrong order.
Well, I keep my place in the queue when I put my hand down, but let's hope.
Well, you've had your place in the queue. So now I've got Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's funny that there's 2 marks there, and Anyway, I'd like to propose Councillor Graham Wilson. He's obviously very much on the ball, and his opposition, a yellow rosette.
Thank you very much,
I'm
Derek.
talking from a white rosette point of view, but no, I'd like to nominate.
Thank you very much. So you're nominating Councillor Wilson, and is there a seconder for Councillor Wilson?
Yes, I'll second Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Nicola. So that's a second nomination. Do I have any further nominations? I've got Councillor Harrison, you had your hand up next. No. Okay, Councillor Crawford.
I'd like to nominate myself, but I haven't got a seconder. So,
well, perhaps we can call for a seconder. Is there a seconder for Councillor Crawford's nomination? I'm afraid I'm not seeing anyone put their hand up, Sandra, but please, please make sure that you call for any paperwork and that you feed in, that is absolutely legitimate part of the process and a thing to do. And you can do that either directly to any of the members who end up on the working group or straight to officers, whichever you feel most comfortable with. Okay, members, so we've got 2 duly proposed and seconded nominations. So we've got David Ambrose Smith and Graham Wilson, who have both been nominated and seconded. So we do now need to take a vote. So I will ask, what I propose is that we are voting on David Ambrose Smith first, and I will I will call out members' names and ask them to say whether they're for or against the nomination of David Ambrose Smith. First in my list is Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Slightly unfortunate order there. Councillor Adela Costello.
For.
Councillor Sandra Crawford. You're still on mute, Sandra. Sandra, can you hear us? You're on mute at the moment. I'm asking you to say whether you're for or against the nomination of David Ambrose Smith.
I've clicked the relevant thing at the bottom, I think.
Okay, so you're against.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Derek Giles.
Well, obviously, no, I'm against, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Goldsack.
I'm for David.
Councillor Nicola Harrison.
Against.
Councillor Mark Howell.
For.
Councillor Bill Hunt.
For.
Councillor Graham Wilson.
Against.
And myself, Councillor Anna Bailey, I am for. I do think there's merit in the Vice Chairman being part of the working group. So can I ask Democratic Services? I'm assuming that that is therefore carried. Can you give us the result of that vote?
Sorry, so I'm just doing that now. Sorry. So that's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Sorry, Graham.
That's 6 for and 4 against. So that's carried.
That is carried, and so the second nomination, I'm afraid, Graham, does fall away. But as I said to Sandra, I hope, well, maybe you'll be nominated on one of the other committees. I'm not sure of your other committees, but you know, I hope if you're not on it, you will, you know, still endeavour to feed in. I've never known nominations for a working group to be so popular. I must admit, I wasn't expecting this. Okay, so can I now call for nominations for a representative from the Health Committee, please? And I've got a blue hand from Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
I'd like to nominate Linda Harford.
Chair, would it just be possible for me to just ask a question or make a point?
Yes, please do.
Have the other committees been notified of the need to do this? Because unless Councillor Wilson tells me different, I see. Perhaps Councillor Wilson is aware. I beg your pardon, I wasn't aware.
Absolutely, they have, yeah. Okay. Right, so we've had a nomination by David Ambrose Smith of Councillor Linda Harford from the Health Committee. Is there a seconder for that? I got Councillor Goldsack, who you seconded.
I'm happy to second Linda for all the right reasons. She's so passionate about this subject, and with her health knowledge on this, I think she's absolutely the right person. She is,
yes, very interested over a very long period of time on this subject. Do I have any other nominations? Councillor Wilson.
Well, can I just clarify, why is the Health Committee not nominating somebody from the Health Committee? Why are we doing it on their behalf?
Well, we've asked all of the committees to put forward, you know, ideas of who their representatives of who they want, and these are the, you know, we are now taking nominations.
Yeah, yes, I appreciate that, but why is the Health Committee not having this discussion themselves in the same way as Mark had the discussion in his committee?
Well, because the chairman of the Health Committee was notified about the need to put someone forward, and this is you know, the process that we're going through now. So these committees are having a representation. What we don't want to do is have to go through a long drawn out process of having this as a formal paper going to every committee. It's completely unnecessary. This is a working group. We're asking for nominations, and we're asking at the moment for nominations from the Health Committee. So do I have any other nominations? Councillor Wilson, you've still got your hand up?
Well, I'll just for the purposes of having a vote, I'll propose Councillor Susan van der Ven. I have no idea if she'd be willing to do it, because I wasn't aware that we were doing this.
Yes, and I will second her, and I'm aware that she will do it. Yeah.
You are aware?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's good then. I mean, okay. Well, the paper, you know, was published. Okay. So that was Councillor Giles. You've got your hand up.
Yes. Wait a minute.
On mute,
yeah,
it's
in all my nearly 30 years of being on the council, I've never come across a situation like this, because we will be voting, am I not right, on the 2 nominations from the Health Committee. And it looks like one of them is a Conservative, and it's already been decided. No doubt the general purposes and the communities. So would it not be an idea to see who's actually been nominated and just get it over with? Because you know what's going to happen, Anna, the same as I do.
That is what we're doing. That is what we're doing, Derek. But obviously, well, Derek, please don't let's just get through this process. There's no point arguing about it. I'm calling for nominations. People have every right to put forward the people that they want to nominate. And then in a democratic process, which is how democracy works, if there is a contested nomination, we have a vote. And that is how the process works. Please don't interrupt me, Councillor Giles. I can see you wanting to speak. If you want to speak again, can you put your blue hand up? And, you know, I will bring you in after everybody else has had their turn. At the moment, I'm calling for nominations for a representative from the Health Committee. So far, we've got duly proposed and seconded. We've got Councillor Linda Harford and Councillor Susan van der Ven. Councillor Harrison, you've still got your blue hand up. Was that from last time? No, okay. Councillor Crawford, it's your turn to speak.
I'd like to nominate Linda Jones, and I feel that she is actually very good on the Health Committee, and I also feel that, you know, we should have a balanced representation.
Thank you very much. And do you have a second? Is there somebody who's willing to second Linda Jones as a nomination? There isn't at the moment, Councillor Crawford, so I'm sorry, but that nomination doesn't stand. So we're now going to move to a vote on, well, Councillor Linda Harford was just first that was nominated. So we will vote on Councillor Linda Harford, and once again, I'll call your names out. So Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Adela Costello.
For.
Councillor Sandra Crawford. Could you unmute your, Councillor Crawford, can I ask you to follow the process that we've set out?
Yeah, I've just voted.
You could just confirm you're voting against. Councillor Crawford's voting against. Councillor Giles?
Against.
Councillor Goldsack?
For.
Councillor Harrison?
Against.
Councillor Howell?
For.
Councillor Hunt?
For.
Councillor Wilson?
Against.
And myself, I am for. I think Linda Harford will make a good nomination from the Health Committee. So Tamar, do you want to just confirm?
That's 6 for and 4 against.
Right, we've got General Purposes Committee. Do I have a nomination for General Purposes Committee? Councillor Giles?
No.
Okay, can you take your blue hand down? Councillor Howell?
Yes, I would like to nominate Councillor Steve Count.
Is there a seconder for that? Is that Councillor Costello?
Yes, I'd like to second that one, please.
Do I have other nominations? I've got Councillor Harrison wanting to speak. Councillor Harrison, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry, I do beg your pardon. Councillor Lucy Netzinger.
She's willing to do it.
Yep.
She's able to do it, is she? Okay.
Yep.
And is there a seconder for that? Councillor Wilson, you'd like to second? Okay. Any other nominations? I'm not seeing any, so we'll move to the vote as again, and just because he was nominated first, we'll be voting on Steve Count. So Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Costello.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
Against.
Councillor Giles.
Against.
Councillor Goldsack.
For.
Councillor Harrison.
Against.
Councillor Howell.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Self, Anna Bailey, I'm for. Okay, communities and partnerships.
Sorry, so that's 6 for and 4 against. Yeah.
Thank you, Tamar. So that is carried. Right. Sorry. Communities and partnerships nominations. Councillor Howell, you've got your blue hand up. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. Adela, I would like to nominate Councillor Adela Costello.
Adela, you're happy to be nominated? I take it she's nodding. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yes, that's me. I've got my hand up. I'd like to second it.
Thank you very much. And any other nominations? I've got Councillor Harrison with your hand
Yes,
up.
Councillor Henry Batchelor.
He's happy to do it. Able to do it, is he?
I wouldn't be nominating if he wasn't.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Wilson. Okay, any other nominations? No, okay. So Adela was first nomination, Councillor Adela Costello, so we're voting on that. So Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Costello.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
Against.
Councillor Giles. Councillor Giles.
Against. What's the point?
Councillor Goldsack.
For.
Councillor Harrison.
Against.
Councillor Howell.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Against.
And myself, Councillor Bailey, I'm for.
Okay, so that's again is 6 for, 4 against.
Thank you. And lastly, but not least at all, in fact, probably quite important, Commercial and Investment Committee. So can I please have nominations for the C&I Committee? Councillor Goldsack, you've got your hand up.
This might be a bit of fun here, Chair, because the the Committee of C&I sat, and we would like to nominate Linda Jones.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for that nomination? Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Happy to second.
Thank you. And I think I heard you saying earlier she was happy to do it and wanted to do it. Councillor Harrison, you've got your hand up. Have you got a nomination?
No, we'll support Councillor Linda Jones.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Well, I'll do this. Let's just do it. Any other nominations? I can't see any. So let's vote on this. So Councillor Linda Jones is the nomination. So Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Costello.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Giles.
Yes. For.
Councillor Goldsack.
For.
Councillor Harrison.
For.
Councillor Howell.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
And myself, Councillor Bailey, I'm also for. So that is, in fact, unanimous. So that's Linda Jones, is appointed from the Commercial and Investment Committee. Right, having got through all of that, I do just want to reiterate the point, which I know I've laboured, but you know, there is the opportunity to feed into this working group for anybody that wants to, and you can liaise with any of the members or directly to officers and ask for papers and so forth. Right, committee, Councillor Crawford, you've got something you'd like to say? You're on mute, Councillor Crawford.
Would you mind circulating a list of those people that we've just... It'd just be
That'll
very
be
helpful.
That'll be in the
Thank you.
minutes, Sandra. Yeah, no problem. Okay, committee. So just back to the main recommendations then. We're asked to approve the request to set up a members reference group and to agree the representatives from the relevant committees mentioned. On the basis that I obviously got the feeling that not everybody was happy, we probably need to take an individual vote on this. Unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to call out people's names, I think is the most appropriate thing to do. So members, those in favour, please say for, well, please indicate whether you're for the recommendations or against the recommendations when I call out your name. So Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Costello.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Giles.
I'm going to abstain, Chairman.
Goldsack.
For.
Councillor Harrison.
Against.
Councillor Howell.
For.
Councillor Hunt. Councillor Hunt. We can't hear you, Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
He's too busy eating his biscuits. Against.
And myself, Councillor Bailey, I'm for. Okay, that concludes that item. Thank you very much. And Councillor Tamar, do you need to report the outcome of that vote, given that it was contested?
I'll just report that now. Yeah, so we've got 7 for, 2 against and 1 abstention.
So that is carried. Okay, item 10, a really detailed report on support for carers, and I think Shauna Torrance and Helen Duncan are here to talk to us about this important piece of work.
Thank you. Similar to last presentation, the joint one, I will do the presentation and then both Helen and I will take questions. So this report seeks to provide Adults Committee with an update on the work that's taken place as part of the Adults Positive Challenge programme to support carers in Cambridgeshire. It also covers an overview of the impact we've had to date and next steps in moving forward into this year. The population of carers is growing, both locally and nationally, and for some time now, carers has been placed right at the centre of the Adults Positive Challenge programme. The programme absolutely recognises the value of providing carers with information, advice and support, which enables them to improve their wellbeing, meet their outcomes, and most importantly, continue to care for their loved ones. We have been developing our approach to support carers across a number of areas in line with the priorities outlined in section 2.1 of the report. Ensuring we identify carers early and have meaningful conversations with them has been absolutely key to preventing crisis and breakdown. This does not always mean a statutory assessment, and through the use of strengths-based conversations within the Adults Positive Challenge programme, we've moved towards a more tailored approach which looks at the individual, their circumstances and their need, and whether that be information, advice or a formal assessment and support. In doing so, we've moved away from a standardised approach and a reliance on one-off standard direct payments, and the positive impacts of this, both on an individual level and a council level, have been shown in the report in section 2.5.3. It's really important this change in practice is sustained and embedded, and given this, focus has been given to sharing best practice and raising awareness both internally and externally. The Carers Brochure and the radio appearance are just 2 examples of this, and the Carers Huddles ensure an ongoing focus across the operational teams is given to sustained improvement and practice development. It's a place where practitioners are given the opportunity to discuss live cases, share opportunities and look at different ways of doing things. From a commissioning perspective, an all-age carers service has now been successfully commissioned and started on the 1st of August this year. For the first time, we have an aligned service being delivered across all age and client groups. Whilst these services work really closely with the statutory in-house support team, the focus of the commissioned service is very much on prevention, and in doing so, it provides a whole range of services from information advice, peer-to-peer support, through to emergency support for up to 72 hours should carers need it. The pandemic, I think it's fair to say, has magnified the importance of support for carers who have been hugely impacted by lockdown measures and the virus, and a number of national reports have recently been released showing the impact of this. And I think locally, it's fair to say we're butting that trend, and we are actively addressing the key messages that are coming out of those reports. And carers formed a key part of the council's response to the pandemic, which saw staff redeployed from all over the council towards supporting, contacting those carers, putting in place support where it was required. And again, positive feedback from that has been detailed in section 2.9.3 of the report. The Council's Commission Service took a similar approach and expanded their offer in response to the pandemic as well. Whilst we've made significant progress over the last year, I think we still have more to do. Over the coming year, we will seek to expand and embed the changes in practice and approach that we've developed to date, with a focus on aligning this to our NHS partners to ensure that we're taking a joint approach across the system. We'll seek to further embed the new contract, ensuring it works hand in hand with the Adults Positive Challenge programme to continuously improve and embed new ideas and ways of working. We will also seek to work with Think communities to explore how we can better link carers in with community assets and networks of volunteers, as well as information, advice and guidance for support, and we are actively working on that at the moment. Finally, the review, we are at the moment and will continue to learn from COVID and incorporate that and amend and change up our work stream as and when we need to in response to that. I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Shauna, and thank you to you and Helen for this really detailed report. It's an increasingly critically important area, this, and never more so during COVID. And I'm happy to open it to members for any questions about the report or any comments or feedback that you have for officers. I just want to, Councillor Wilson, do you want to go first?
Well, I don't want to stop you, Anna. I just wanted to welcome this. It is, as you say, an extremely comprehensive report. It gives us a lot of background about what's going on. As a result of reading the report this morning, I did go on the County Council's website and saw an awful lot of helpful information for carers. But the thing I couldn't find was the carers brochure. Is that on there and you could send us a link, or is it something separate that you could send to us?
Shall I come in on that, Shauna? So I think the brochure that we're talking about within the report is actually one that we've provided for staff. So what that does is we're trying to embed the new approach, and it's a brochure with case studies that of great practice, and we've actually written it for staff. What I think would be helpful is if we share that, and I'm sorry that we didn't put that in, but I'm really happy to share that and circulate with the minutes, because actually I think it really gives a good insight into how our practice has changed, but more importantly what people have said about it. So it's not on the website at the moment, Councillor Wilson. What we're doing is trying to amend the wording in that so that there is something for our carers to read, but it is very much about practice and embedding the work with our staff.
Okay, thank you. Well, we do have access to CamWeb, so if there's other stuff that you publish on CamWeb for staff, then you could point us to that as well, and we could look at it at our leisure.
That would be great, Helen. If you could make sure that that does get circulated with the minutes, Helen and Tamar, that would be fantastic. Thank you. It'd be good to see it. And also, I received a really interesting report from the Alzheimer's Society, which looked about the impact of COVID on people with dementia, and with a particular focus on carers. And they produced a really helpful 2-page briefing on, recommendations really. And I know that officers have already set up meetings with the Alzheimer's Society to make sure that we're embracing all of the recommendations that came out of their piece of work, which was really interesting read and an important document, I think. And I know probably shouldn't do this, and I don't want to embarrass her, but I do want to pay tribute to Helen for leading this work, because it is a pretty radical change that we've made. We weren't doing a good job. There's no beating about the bush. We weren't doing a great job with carers. We knew that, from the survey feedback that we get from carers, that we could do a lot better. And it just shows you that, it's not all about money, because what we were previously doing was giving carers a sort of one-off, usually pretty nominal direct payment, which went some way to fixing something that was a problem in their lives, but really is not the issue. And what carers need is, I think, actually their demands are not usually great. They are very giving people, and they need to know that if something goes wrong for them, that we're going to pick up pieces and step in there and help. And they need a plan around that. They need to know that they're not on their own, and you can tell that from the flavour of the conversations that during the pandemic, during the lockdown period, that we had when staff were picking up the phone and speaking to all of our carers, and those really positive conversations, and just an understanding that their help was there if they needed it and when they needed it, and a huge number of those being put in touch with the volunteer effort out in our communities as well at that time, to just make their lives a little bit more practical, and very often just small practical things, and just knowing that there's someone there if they need help. It's a massive, massive thing for carers. And so I do want to say a massive thank you for the way that you've turned this council around, for the way it supports carers. And, you know, there's work to do. There's always lots more work to do, but we are absolutely on the right track with this stuff. And it's so important and more important in the future. We know the number of carers is growing massively. We've got our aging, you know, the aging population, and needs are increasing. So it's only going to get bigger. So thank goodness we've got this on the right track. And you know, any other information that people get from, you know, your discussions with people out there on the ground, please keep feeding those into the organisation, because it's only by getting that feedback that, you know, we can make our services better and more responsive and doing what people need them to do. So thank you, Helen, and all your colleagues, because I know it's a joint effort. I'm not seeing any other hands, but I don't think you should take that as any indication other than wholehearted support, which is, I know what it is, Helen and Shauna, so thank you. So the recommendation is that we're just being asked to consider and provide feedback, and we've done that. So thank you very much for everything that you've done, and for coming here and waiting patiently to explain to us.
Thank you.
Right, so I don't think we need a vote on that. We've dealt with that. And just item 11 is the Adults Committee Forward Agenda Plan. Members, you were circulated this morning with an update following some changes that were made while we were having our briefing meeting with officers. So the changes have been highlighted in yellow. Tamar, was there anything else you needed to say about the forward agenda?
No, other than, yeah, I've sent the changes round, so if there are any comments.
So anybody wanted to, Councillor Wilson?
Well, I'm sorry, but I haven't looked at my county council emails to know what changes there were.
I can go through it, so if that will help, that's fine. So the changes for December, there's a new report on Infection Control Fund coming to committee in December. So that's just been added as a key decision. And then we'll also be having a report on the discharge to assess process. And also the Brexit preparation update will come to committee in December as well. And they're the changes for December. And then the change in January is for the service director's report will also include adults positive challenge and think communities to that report. I think that's everything.
Okay. That's very helpful, thank you. Yeah. Is it possible for the December meeting that we have a discussion about the finance report? We get monthly finance reports from Stephen or somebody, and the most recent one is showing an overspend that is currently unfunded, about 8 million in adults safeguarding and commissioning. So it'd be useful if we could get and actually have a discussion rather than receiving the report in December, so that we know what the situation is.
So, Councillor Wilson, while during this alternative way of working that we've been having for some months now, that is one that is normally just circulated. But what I think we can certainly do is make sure that the salient points are included in perhaps in our business planning, paper. So that there is an opportunity. They don't necessarily need to be in the paper. The report will have been circulated as usual, but I'm certainly happy to open an opportunity while we're talking about the business planning. It would almost be impossible not to discuss the finances for this year. Does that seem okay, Tamar? Does that work?
Sorry.
Because the decision's been made by group leaders that we only have those information reports, so the performance reports and the finance reports as circulated. But if there was opportunity to discuss the points through the business planning, then
so Councillor Wilson, you'll get the paper as usual offline, so it won't be published as part of the agenda. But rest assured, we will.
Of course, this will be Sorry. This will be discussed again at group leaders probably before the December committee, so it may change. So we just need to wait and see.
Okay, it's just that within adults, which I think is different to many of the other committees, we're forecasting a 5% overspend by the end of at the moment, and it could well get worse as a result of COVID. I think it's our responsibility to understand a bit more about that, and I'm happy that we do it as part of the business planning process. And in the same way, I would ask Stephen questions about the opening balance for 2021-22. But there are certain things in the business finance report, in the finance report, which help to set out the reasons, which are more comprehensive than the business planning reports can be.
Completely understand, Councillor Wilson, and of course when you get the report you are also free to ask officers directly any questions that you want to have clarification, and it's inevitable that you know, discussion during a business planning paper will necessarily need to look at, you know, the current financial situation, so that's fine if you're happy with that, and as Tamar says, it may well even change before then. Okay, anything else from anybody on the forward agenda or training plan?
Well, I did have something to raise that on the training plan. Yes. We're looking to set up a meeting with Health Watch colleagues in January, and I'm just trying to finalise some dates for that, and that's to discuss. Sorry, I'm just looking at this now. Adult social care partnership boards and other expert by experience groups. Yeah. So I'm just looking to set that up now, and that will go to all members.
Okay.
So it's just all to let you know.
Committee. All members are committee. Okay, so that will be circulated.
All members. It will go to all members. It's not just adult committee. So.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Tamar.
Yeah.
Graham, was that your hand from before, or did you want to come back in?
No, now that we've moved on to the training plan, I just was going to suggest that the notes column should be updated to demonstrate what has happened and give a clearer indication as if we want to arrange a virtual visit or further information on these topics listed at the end. There's a mechanism for us to do so, whether we come back to Tamar or somebody else.
Dee's actually let me know that officers are hoping to review the training plan for the December meeting. So yes, and I'll talk to her about how you can feed through in terms of virtual meetings or any virtual training.
Thank you very much, Tamar. That's great. Thanks, Graham. Okay, members, so item 12 is just the date of the next meeting, which is expected to be on the 10th of December. So we're not expecting to have to use the November meeting unless something really untoward happens, but obviously we'll confirm that formally by email. But next meeting for your diary dates is 10th of December. Thank you very much for your participation today, and we declare the meeting closed. Thank you.